spoiler warning. The misty, smoky animation of Ghostbur in this opening shot is very well done, and properly portrays an individual whose physical form isn't fully there. This background, featuring New L'Manberg in the wake of the first explosion, is frankly incredible. These houses, built on stilts over the crater beneath, are all well drawn and positioned and sized properly to maintain a consistent perspective from the standpoint of the viewer. 10 wins. Also, the way the sun rises and shines in the background. This anvil is lifted up in a very natural motion. It goes up, halts, then goes up again, and you really get the idea that whoever is raising it is struggling. Additionally, the sunlight reflecting off the anvil makes the shot even more impressive. Tubbo looking over his slowly rebuilding country, flanked by 2 L'Manberg flags, is a shot that goes incredibly hard. Subtle as it is, the audience can tell from his facial expressions how uncertain Tubbo feels about his future as the leader of L'Manberg and his next objectives, particularly when it comes to hunting down Technoblade. The implications are very clear, since he's holding one of the Butcher Army axes, as if to reassure himself that the plan is necessary. I feel like this is worth 5 wins for how well executed it is.
You're like a ghost.
These sun rays shining into Phil's house. Also, I like how Phil is in the background of this shot rather than the foreground. It allows the viewer to absorb his presence more naturally, and I prefer it to the idea of having Phil show up right in the middle of the screen.
You're haunting me.
There's a couple things to go over here. First, we have some good foreshadowing, with Phil looking up at the anvil the Butcher Army will use to attempt to execute Techno, which is already worth a win on its own. However, this shot is made even better by the way Sadis plays with its imagery. The structure the anvil is hanging from is obviously not as tall as it appears from the perspective of both Phil and the viewer. What I'm taking away from this is that when Phil looks up at the anvil, knowing what the Butcher Army plans to use it for, he's so intimidated by the prospect that the height of the anvil appears more drastic to him than it is in reality. This is genius, and I'm going to assign 10 wins for it. Is that too much? Well, I make the rules, so... No, it isn't. The transition between the previous shot of Phil and the anvil to the shot of Techno's house in the snowy wild is extremely smooth. Also, the animation transitioning right from Phil looking up at the anvil in fear to Techno's whereabouts subtly implies Phil is specifically concerned about what the Butcher Army will do to Techno. Lastly, before we move on, I also want to award 5 more wins for this beautiful background shot.
You're haunting me.
The only thing that works in this world?
More light rays, let's go! Also the way the sunlight shines off Techno's crown.
Is that you treat others as they treat you.
This perspective shot from the ground looking up as the bird flies across the screen is so cool. So is the transition between that shot and this one.
Those that have
Nice glitch effects for Ghostbur. Once again, it gives off the impression that he isn't fully there.
treated me with kindness, I will repay that kindness tenfold.
Oh boy, Sadis just keeps killing it with this window lightning. Oh, I just realized that if animation sins were still around, they'd be complaining about void scenes, wouldn't they? Also, the set design for Techno's study is fantastic, with a lot of attention to detail and care put into the illustrations. It's not explicitly stated in the animation, but anyone who's familiar with the Dream SMP can infer that the one sending Techno these messages is Phil. I like how it's not made super clear, even though it still does more to establish their bond.
And those that treat me with injustice?
As Tobo is walking, his shadow visible on the wall, we can see a painting of Jschlat, the previous dictator of L'Manberg, who treated Tubbo like dirt and even had him executed. This implies that Tubbo still hasn't moved on from all of that and carries lasting trauma from Schlatt's reign. This whole scene is double genius, because going back to what I just said, the one Schlatt assigned to execute Tubbo was Techno, of whom Tubbo is now hunting down with the Butcher Army. With this knowledge, we can understand Tubbo's motivations for begrudgingly going along with the plan. He thinks he'll be put at peace if he can get back at Techno for what he's done in the past to wrong him. But wait, actually this is triple genius, because the animation is overlaying Techno's voice on top of this scene, and Techno is talking about how he repays those who treat him with injustice with yet more injustice. The thing that's so clever about this is that, as I've already established, Tubbo has internalized the exact same idea himself, but with the roles reversed. Both Techno and Tubbo share the same philosophy in this instance. Techno wants revenge after the Butcher Army comes for him, but Tubbo wants revenge for what Techno has done to him before, which is what leads him to go along with the Butcher Army in the first place. The thematic implications and parallels are just, you know what, screw it, 20 wins. Again, I make the rules.
That treat me with injustice?
And just when I thought there wasn't going to be anything else to praise about this scene, Sadist pulled off this transition with the swing of Tubbo's axe.
That use me?
Depth of field.
You're haunting me now.
I shall repay that injustice 1,000 times over.
The way Techno's eyes glow yellow from behind the smoke. Also the smoke effects here in general.
I shall repay that injustice 1,000 times over.
Okay, do I even need to explain why this is so cool? Techno lunging out of the smoke and elegantly swinging his sword at one of his enemies from their own perspective. It's just so awesome. 5 wins. I also like how the transition between Techno slashing the camera and this shot of the Butcher Army discussing their plan plays out. The sound effect overlaid on top of this shot change is extremely fitting and effective in adding to the feel of the Butcher Army raiding Phil's home.
Hey, Big Q! Look what I've found.
Absolute utter fear in Phil's face. Also, that entire sequence of shots was really well edited and structured to give off a sense of urgency and chaos.
So the plan is simple. We find...
Another great shot of Phil looking out from his balcony. His face isn't visible, but he looks defeated and grim, as if he knows he can't do anything to stop the Butcher Army from going after Techno next.
We kill Technoblade.
I'll take amazing transition number I don't even know anymore for 500, Alex. Very clever of Sadist to cut immediately from Phil, who's worrying about Techno, to Techno, who is now dealing with the same exact thing Phil was worrying about.
I choose blood! No! Oh no! What?
These potion effects.
Big Q, do something! Big Q!
While brief, this fight animation between Techno and Tubbo is smooth and satisfying. You can tell just how utterly terrified Tubbo is in this particular shot, barely able to hold off his opponent.
Stop! Stop! You get away from that horse, Quackity!
Techno's blade swipes across the entire screen, and it's neat.
Technoblade, drop everything, or I'm going to kill this horse right in front of you.
It's subtle, but Techno's expressions in this shot do well to establish how frightened he is for Carl's safety, as well as how reluctant he is to surrender at first. It's an interesting contrast. That series of quick shots in sync with the music? Incredible.
You actually got him.
Phil's face shows one emotion more than anything else in this shot: disbelief at the idea that Techno was successfully captured.
Phil, what did they do to you?
The voices of all the characters in the scene, overlaid with the sound effects of Techno struggling against his chains, adds a lot to the distressing tone. I like this shot because while there's not much going on with it, it still communicates vital information to the viewer. The only thing to note here is the anvil. No character can be seen, nothing moves, and the music is completely dropped off. It's literally just the anvil hanging in the air, waiting to be dropped. It gives off a bleak feel, almost as if to communicate to the viewer that the fight is over and hope is lost. The slight movements in Techno's hair.
Technoblade has robbed our country of everything that made it special, of everything that defined what it was.
I'm not sure what effect Sadist used on Tubbo's voice for this animation, but it works wonders to make him sound like he's actually giving a speech from a podium as an authority figure. Ah yes, Stream sitting on the sidelines, pulling the strings as always. Still don't like him as a person in real life, but he continues to be cool in these animations. I love how Puns removes his cloak and throws his potions at the exact same time. I also love how the shot seems to freeze for a moment and the potions hang in the air, as if to give the viewer time to let this all sink in.
Think you pull the lever!
Including Techno's signature, is worthy of at least 10 wins.
Pull the lever, big you!
There's something so terrifying about how slow-moving this series of shots are. Techno is anxiously awaiting the impact of the anvil, and so is the viewer. Sneaking in a shot of Ghostbur right before the anvil hits? Neat. Satis shows the Totem of Undying going off instead of leaving the audience unsure as to why Techno survives. This shot of Techno's face slowly reconstructing itself is not only incredibly raw and well animated, but a creative interpretation of how Totems of Undying actually work, worthy of 10 wins. Tubbo yelling in the distance is just perfect. The rapid flashes of black as figures rush across the screen do well to establish how hectic the current situation is. The way Carl is visibly happy when Techno finds his way back to him. Quackity being revealed behind Techno as the camera pans. Just wow.
Did you really think, Quackity, that you could kill me that easily?
You have done so much fucking damage to everything we've been building all fucking long, Techno.
I have a pickaxe, and I'll put it through your teeth!
Goodness, the music goes so incredibly hard in this scene. I love Quackity's expression here because he's just visibly pissed. He wanted Techno to die more than anyone, and he's outraged that he didn't get his wish when the anvil was dropped. The viewer can tell just how determined he is to finish the job. This fight animation is so amazingly done, it deserves 20 whole wins on its own. The way Sadist utilizes perspective in this fight is also worthy of another win. And there you have it, folks. The most iconic part of the entire animation, and it goes so hard. Also, the way Techno's voice echoes after he finishes his line. This shot following the battle is calm, as it should be, but I love how it also shows remnants of the violence that took place before, with the blood staining the snow on the ground.
See, there's something telling me that I haven't shown anyone, not even Philza. I have been working on just a little hobby, Tom.
Tommy's face doesn't even move, yet you can still tell how curious he is.
Just a little hobby, Tom. You see this wall?
The light of the vault shining down on Tommy as it opens is just too good.
Welcome home, Theseus!
And we end on yet another shot that goes hard as heck. 10 wins. Techno's laugh as the animation ends is absolutely chilling. So where do I even start with this? There's so much to praise about this animation that it's hard to really describe it, but I'll give it my best shot. First of all, obviously the animation itself is very well done and fluid. The fight scenes in particular absolutely slap. The characters are also well designed and fantastically drawn, with Techno's hog mask design being my personal favorite. Next I'll touch upon the editing, which is amazing as well. Sadist has mastered the art of dramatic pacing by correctly placing fast, rapid, and urgent shots in scenes where it matches the tone, and conversely placing slow, tense scenes when it's warranted. Shot composition is also highly impressive, with so many gorgeous backgrounds and set designs across the entire animation. In addition, transitions between different shots were very creative and used effectively throughout the animation. Another thing Sadist mastered for Hog Hunt was imagery and thematic connections, which I already went over before with the exaggerated height of the anvil from Phil's perspective, and the parallels between Techno and Tubbo. Obviously, the two-way remix of Ghost by Marvin Brooks was an incredible choice of song, and the music went hand in hand with the animation, amplifying the dramatic tension tenfold. Sound effects were also well implemented, as were the voices of the content creators featured in the animation. Although Techno's voice is very deep and monotone, his lines still go incredibly hard, and Sadist managed to make them sound awesome for her purposes. Of course, this animation is a great adaptation of the events of the Dream SMP, accurately portraying what happened in the story while taking enough creative liberties to make it look 1,000 times more awesome. Lastly, Hog Hunt is the perfect love letter to Technoblade and his character's role in the story, portraying him as the legendary anti-hero warrior he is. I could not think of a better homage to Techno's impact on the Dream SMP, and for that I will assign an entire 500 wins. Why? Because that's how many millions of potatoes Techno harvested on Hypixel to win the Great Potato War against Squid Kid.
Drink your milkshake.